Can I help you? Asked the woman behind the counter. Yeah, said Evan. He stuck his hand in his pocket and felt all the money. Bills and coins ruffled between his fingers. Money was meant to be spent. Why not spend a little? Evan could just imagine how good the ice cream would feel sliding down his hot throat. Creamy, sweet, like cold golden deliciousness. He let his mind float as he gazed at the swirly buckets of ice cream. The sound of laughter brought him back to earth in a hurry. He looked around. It was just some girls he didn't know at the water fountain, but it had sounded like Megan Moriarty. Can you please tell us how much a glass of lemonade costs? $3, said the woman. Really? Said Evan. That much? How big's a cup? The woman pulled a plastic cup off a stack and held it up. It wasn't much bigger than the 8-ounce cups Evan had in his wagon. Wow, $3. Thanks a lot, said Evan. Well, thanks anyway. He started to walk to the door. Hey, said the woman, pointing to the ice cream case. I'm allowed to give you a taste for free. Really? Said Evan. Then could I taste the strawberry slam? The woman handed him a tiny plastic spoon with 3 licks worth of pink ice cream on it. Evan swallowed it all in one gulp. Back outside, he got to work. First, he filled his pitchers with water from the drinking fountain. Then he stirred in the mix. Then he pulled out a big blue marker and wrote on a piece of paper, 2 per cup, $2 per cup. Best price in town. He barely finished setting up when the customers started lining up, and they didn't stop. For a full hour, he poured lemonade. The world is a thirsty place, he thought as he nearly emptied his 4th pitcher of the day, and I am the lemonade king. Later, Evan would think of something his grandma said, pride goeth before a fall. When Evan looked up, there was Officer Ken, his hands on his hips, looking down at him. Evan gulped. He stared at the large, holstered gun strapped to Officer Ken's belt. Hello, said Officer Ken, not smiling. Hi, said Evan. Officer Ken did the bike rodeo every year at Evan's school. He was also the cop who had shown up last fall when there was a hurt goose on the recess field. Officer Ken was always smiling. Why isn't he smiling now? Evan wondered. Do you have a permit? Asked Officer Ken. He had a very deep voice, even when he talked quietly, like he did now. You mean like a bike permit? That's what the rodeo was all about. If they passed the rodeo, the 3rd graders got their bike permits, which meant they were allowed to ride to school. No, I mean a permit to sell food and beverages in a public space. You need to get a permit from the town hall and pay a fee for the privilege. Pay the town hall to run a lemonade stand? Was he kidding? Evan looked at Officer Ken's face. He didn't look like he was kidding. I didn't know I needed one, said Evan. Sorry, friend, said Officer Ken. I'm going to have to shut you down. It's the law. But there are lemonade stands all over town, said Evan. He thought of Jessie and Megan's lemonade stand. Then he wheeled by with his wagon more than an hour ago. Their stand had looked like a beehive, with small kids crowding around. He had read the sign over their stand. Free face painting, nail polishing, hair braiding. What a gimmick. But it sure looked like it was working. You know, said Evan, there's a stand on Damon Road right now. You should go bust them. Officer Ken smiled. We tend to look the other way when it's in a residential neighborhood. But right here on the town green, we have to enforce the law. Otherwise, we'd have someone selling something every 2 feet. But there had to be some way to convince Officer Ken. How could Evan make him understand? You see, I've got this little sister, and we've got a competition going to see who can sell the most lemonade, and I've got to win because she's... He couldn't explain the rest about 4th grade and how embarrassed he was to be in the same class as his kid sister and how it made him feel like a great big loser. Evan looked up at Officer Ken. Officer Ken looked down at Evan. It was like Officer Ken was wearing a mask, a no smiling, I'm not your buddy mask. Then Officer Ken shook his head and smiled, and the mask fell off. I've got a little sister too, he said. Love her to death now. But when we were kids, Officer Ken sucked in his breath and shook his head. Whew! Then the mask came back, and Officer Ken looked right at Evan for the 10 very stern seconds. Tell you what, said Officer Ken, I do have to shut you down, but the law's the law. But before I do, I'll buy 1 glass of lemonade. How's that sound? Evan's face fell. Sure, he said without enthusiasm. He poured an extra tall cup and gave it to the policeman. Officer Ken reached into his pocket and handed Evan a $5 bill. Keep the change, he said. A contribution to the Big Brother Fund. Now clean up your things and don't leave any litter behind. He lifted his cup in a toast as he walked away. Evan watched him go. Wow, he thought, I just sold the most expensive cup of lemonade in town. Evan stared at the $5 bill in his hand. It was funny. 2 days ago, he would have felt as rich as a king to have that money in his hands. It was enough to buy 2 slices of pizza and a soda with his friends. It was enough to rent a video and have a late night at someone's house. It was enough to buy a whole bag full of his favorite candy mix at CVS. 2 days ago, he would have been jumping for joy.